Okay, Pastor Sean, I think we can begin if
Right. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our April gen2gen activity here. It's wonderful to see you all here. And we are very grateful that you are here, and also Karen and Luis as well. As we celebrate Earth Day today, is it right, Terry? Earth
yes,
Day.
yes.
We gather with open hearts and listening for God's presence through Karen and Luis' presentation. So I hope that it's not only just God's nature, but in our lives as well. So I hope that you will enjoy this time with Karen and Louis' guidance and tours for us. Let us begin with a word of prayer together. Let us pray. Loving God, thank you for this day, for the beauty of creation around us, and open our eyes to see you, and our ears to hear you, and our heart to receive what you offer through the Louis and Karen. And remind us that you are with us, even in our stillness and in our nature and in every place that we face. So bless our time together. Amen.
Amen.
I want to turn to Terry. Please introduce our speakers today.
Okay, happy Earth Day, everybody, and welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. We're very, very honored and pleased to have Karen and Louis Pandula be our guest speakers today, and they will talk about encountering God in the wilderness. Louis was born in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and immigrated to the United States when he was 9 years old in 1969. He's a retired electrical engineer who designed wireless audio systems and semiconductors for 30 years. For the last 10 years of his career, he worked at Broadcom. Karen was born in New Jersey and lived in many places in the United States as well as in Europe. She graduated from the University of Texas with a degree in electrical engineering and worked as a hardware engineer and technical writer while raising their two children, Christina and Stephen. Their daughter, Christina, died unexpectedly in 2011. Their son, Stephen, who's now 33, is a Cal Poly electrical engineer who graduated from Cal Poly, and he's working at Amazon, and his area is self-driving vehicle division technology stuff. Karen and Louis met in their early 20s and have been happily married for 39 years. They've been grateful members of LAUMC for 25 years, and we are so lucky to have them. They just contribute in a million different ways, each of them individually and then together. So we need to applaud them very, very much for all the good work they do. They have always enjoyed outdoor activities, swimming, hiking, biking. Hiking and backpacking are their favorite. So without further ado, I would like to say welcome to Karen and Louis, and thank you so much for your time and your good energy and all your technical help. So welcome.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thanks very much, Terry, for that wonderful introduction. So Karen's going to start sharing.
One moment, please. Okay.
So you should see a picture of two pretty tall snow-covered mountains and a lake and some trees. Do you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we're on our way. So thanks for having us. And as Terry mentioned, I grew up in Czechoslovakia, and my parents loved the mountains. They loved camping. And there's stories of, my parents used to share stories of carrying my little sister and I in backpacks so they could go hiking in the mountains before we could even walk. And I remember as I got older, in my 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, remembering just feeling a sense of awe in the beauty of nature, and especially awe seeing mountains, mountain ranges. And so, although my family was not very religious back in Czechoslovakia, I certainly felt a powerful connection to some kind of mysterious higher power, which at the time I didn't recognize as coming from God. So, next picture. Well, then we immigrated to the United States in 1969. I had just turned 9 years old and went to high school in Redlands High School down in Southern California. My best friend was part of a Boy Scout troop, and he invited me on a backpacking trip to the Eastern Sierra for, I think, 5 days, and we went up over Mono Pass. And I just remember the first day when we hiked in and seeing those mountains again. Seeing those mountains again, it was just reignited that sense of awe in me and a powerful desire to experience more. So this picture, I forgot to say, is a picture of the Tatra Mountains along the northern border of Czechoslovakia between Poland and Slovakia. And so this is the type of landscape that's very surprising, because a lot of it is agricultural and rural, and then all of a sudden you come up on these mountains. So when I went on that backpacking trip with my best friend, I rediscovered that sense of awe, which again I did not recognize as coming from God. But in a way, I was hooked and I wanted to experience more. And then Karen and I met in our early 20s, and we started going camping and backpacking together. Next.
Yeah. So I had never been camping in my life until I met Louis. My parents had taken us and our family to a few national parks as I was growing up. But we tended to stay, when we hiked, we stayed on the paved trails, and we slept in hotels at night. We ate in restaurants. It was that, nothing like really in the wilderness. So this picture that you're seeing now is on that first trip that Louis took me backpacking. We are sitting on the top of Italy Pass, and perhaps you can imagine the wonder that I experienced in that moment. It's such a humbling experience to feel so insignificant among the giant mountain peaks. And what I find truly remarkable is that we are when you're sitting at the top of the pass like that, it makes me feel so small in terms of the immensity of creation, and yet how remarkable it is that God knows and loves each one of us. It's just incredible to me. So as our children grew, we longed to share our love and awe of the wilderness with them. And we took them on their first backpacking trip to Point Reyes when our daughter Christina was 7 and our son Stephen was 5. And looking back at these pictures now, I realize how very young they were, and perhaps we had put our desire to return to backpacking above their ability level. So we tried again a few years later, and we took them to Desolation Wilderness near Lake Tahoe. And as you can see in their faces, they enjoyed the trip and began to appreciate how backpacking creates a unique experience of solitude with an amazing scenes of God's creation. Your turn.
Okay.
When I asked
Can you check?
Lizzie Lake in the background?
That's Aloha Lake.
Oh, Aloha Lake. Okay.
So can we check, make sure there's nobody in the waiting room?
I think it was popping up, but that's a good point. Let me just check that there's nobody in the waiting room if you just don't mind a pause for a second.
We're going to take a short
How do I go back? Let's see. I don't see anybody in the waiting room.
Okay. So we're going to go back. Okay. Yeah. All right. But then as our family grew, our children grew, our outdoor adventures lapsed a little bit. Because we had many other priorities, including work and other responsibilities. And then by the time our kids moved out of the house, we thought we were too old. We were in our 50s. Doing something like this was way too rigorous for us. And then something amazing happened about 5, 6 years ago. Our son was going backpacking on his own with his friends because he fell in love with it. And he invited us on a trip, which I'll share a little bit later. So we're getting into the heart of our story, which is over the last 5 years, we've done about 20 backpacking trips and racked up hundreds and hundreds of miles of time in the wilderness. And from those adventures over the last 5 years, we chose a few pictures from those trips which show or speak to an experience of God's presence, touch, or guidance on each of those trips. And we could share a lot more, but we really, we realize we only have about 30 minutes of your time. So, so one thing I'd like to mention here, and Karen is our family photographer, and she loves taking pictures, and I think she's very, very good at it. So Karen, can you share a little bit about your philosophy of picture taking in the wilderness?
Thank you, Louis. So I hear some people say, like Louis just said, oh, you take such beautiful pictures of your backpack when you're out backpacking, and I just want to. My response is always that I have to give credit to God, because I just happen to be walking along the path, and I see something that is remarkably beautiful that God created, and I feel like all I'm doing is standing there and pushing the button on my phone. So I want to give credit to God for anything that might impress you in these photos. And I also would just like to share that when we return home and I look at the pictures, I don't do any color editing or exposure changes. So the colors, I try to recreate the picture exactly of what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Louis.
Okay. All right. So as the 2020, we were in the throes of the pandemic, and like I mentioned, our son invited us on his favorite backpacking trip that he discovered with his friend. And he invited us on a relatively easy, it was about 6 miles in, then we set up camp and we did day hikes from there, and then 6 miles back, about 1,500 feet up, so fairly modest. And when he invited us, we felt a lot of trepidation and apprehension about being able to do this, but we actually could do it. And so we, all that apprehension turned into a tremendous sense of gratitude and renewed sense of inspiration. And this picture is in Dinky Lakes Wilderness.
I wonder if I could just sit at the bar.
Okay, if you could please mute yourself, unless you have a question. So this picture is in Dinky Lakes Wilderness, and we're at the top of Dogtooth Peak. That's our sun, and in the background is Fort Wright Reservoir, and in the distance you can see the High Sierra stretching north and south. And while we were on this trip, we were feeling amazement at God's creation again, and that amazement turned into a profound sense of wonder and eagerness to discover and experience more.
Lois, could you mute everybody for us, please, Karen?
I'm doing it right now. Yeah,
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
that's fine.
All right. Okay. I need to switch pictures.
Okay.
So that was our first backpacking trip, and I would say it was a big success. So that same year, and just the very next month, we were so inspired that we did a 5-day backpacking trip. Same kind of format. We hiked in a day or two and then did set up camp and then did day trips from there. And this was kind of stretching what we believed was possible for us late 50-year-olds. But God was showing us we could do more, and he had more wonders to show us. This is the top of a pass in the John Muir Wilderness called Hell for Sure Pass. And that beautiful lake down there is called Hell for Sure Lake. And it's about 11,000 feet. And we always used to chuckle, like, if this is hell for sure, then we're good to go.
No worries.
No worries. If this is where we wind up, then we're okay with that. So let's go to the next picture. Just click. And then skipping over a couple years later, we got even more ambitious. So this was again in the John Muir Wilderness, and we did a 60-mile, 6-day out and back trip along the headwater, up to the headwaters of the North Fork of the Kings River. And this is Portal Lake, which is at the headwaters. And if you look off in the right-hand corner here, you see a little red dot. Not sure if it'll show up on your screen. That's our tent. And this was one of the most grueling trips we had ever, well, so far that we had done. It was rainy. The mosquitoes were swarming. It was in June, and there was no trail for the whole day. We finally got up to camp. It was almost dusk, and we climbed up to this ridge to take a look at where we were after setting up camp and just rested a little bit from such an arduous day. And we had escaped from the mosquitoes a little bit, and we're just taking in the majesty of the Sierras. So this really stretched and inspired us to do more. I think you're
No,
next.
I'm next. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then, this is like one after another, but another trip that year, we went to an area called Selden Pass. And we are at the top of Selden Pass in this photograph, and we're looking down into this series of lakes that are called Marie Lakes. And Liz and I remember we stood at this pass for quite a long time because the beautiful blue lakes were just shimmering in the sunshine, and we could see that our trail, I don't know if you can see it down here on the left-hand side, that our trail is going to take us right down to the edge of the waters here. And of course, when you're standing at the pass, you can see a 360-degree view. But we were very much taken with this area. And what we also realized is that during this trip, we were actually hiking on a portion of the John Muir Trail. And so Louis and I then got the idea that, hey, let's hike the John Muir Trail. When we were younger, it was something we always wanted to do. But we knew it's 210 miles, I'm sorry. And we knew that it was going to be too difficult for us to do as one trip. So we decided that we would break it up into sections. And so that was our new quest, was to complete the John Muir Trail.
Yeah, and you were also going to maybe share that one of the things that struck you about this view was just the amazing color palette in God's kind of repertoire of creation and artistry. Yeah. All right. Well, as Karen said, she got in her head that we're going to do the John Muir Trail, and I had gotten in my head that I had always wanted to climb to the top of Mount Whitney. So that very year, we also had another trip along the John Muir Trail. So doing two goals in one, both the John Muir Trail and the top of Mount Whitney. And this is a view about 1,000 feet from the summit of Mount Whitney, so somewhere above 13,000 feet. And we're camped at that lake down here, Guitar Lake, about 3,000 feet below. We started before dawn, early in the morning, and climbed up. And it was one of the things that I realized on this trip is that God is quite an artist. I had never thought of God as an artist, but I guess other people have thought that. But it sort of dawned on me for the first time. And the other thing that dawned on me was, my goodness, his art is not static. God's art is dynamic and alive. It changes with the colors of the day as the light changes. It changes with the seasons. It changes moment to moment as wildlife and the wind and other things change during our day. So it was a kind of a new sense of awe for me. Next picture.
Okay, let me get back there. Sorry.
Next picture.
Yeah.
So ultimately that day we did make it up to the top of Mount Whitney, and no, we did not carry that sign up. There are a few signs up there that you can grab, and there's quite a few people making that trip up there. And we were grateful that we could make it because, you know, there's a lot of anxiety of what can we physically do. I think now I was in my 60s, so, you know, I thought this could be like, I don't know, the end of it. So next picture.
Sorry, Liz. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, one of the other just stunning things about being at the top of Mount Whitney, as you look around 360 degrees, everywhere you look, you're looking down on mountains. So the peak is at 14,505, and all around us are other peaks that are also 14,000, 13,000 feet tall. And so the sense of awe was just tremendous because everywhere you look, there's these humongous mountains. All right, so that
Okay.
next picture.
So I'll take the next trip. So our next trip, this was in 2023, we went to an area called Spanish Lakes Wilderness. And funny thing is, we went into this trip thinking this is going to be a relatively easy hike for us after doing, you know, these tall mountain passes in the John Muir Trail. And yet we look back and we think this was one of the most challenging trips that we had because the trail was completely overgrown and majority of the time it didn't exist. I mean, we were having to make our way on our own. And so on this trip, we learned patience with each other. We learned how to have patience with difficult situation. And the picture that I'm showing you is a lake called Lower Geraldine Lake. And this is the lake that we were camped at. And so throughout the prior day, we had been going down to this lake and to filter our water or to just splash around in the water a little bit. And it was a very pretty lake. And the next morning when we were getting ready to leave, I again wanted to make sure I had full water bottles. So I went down to the water with my water filter, and all of a sudden I realized is that this an area that I had been to many times, you know, the prior day was now transformed into something just magical. And to me, it showed that God's timing sometimes can change everything. Sometimes we can be in a familiar place, and yet when we go again, God has something new to show us. And this is truly like one of my favorite pictures of all of our backpacking.
So back to the John Muir Trail, then we did another section from Devil's Postpile up to Tuolumne and then to Yosemite Valley. And along the way, we came across this lake. It's called Shadow Lake. And we hiked along the right-hand shore there. And as we reached this outcropping, you can see how the lake is like a mirror, and it's reflecting the mountain that seems to come out of nowhere, like a Jerusalem rising out of nowhere. And there was a very deep and quiet spiritual presence here as we sat there and took this in. Just enveloped us and transported us almost to a different place.
Next.
Well, as we were hiking all these trails, we started talking about, wow, we're really enjoying this and we're really loving this. What about inviting some other people to come along with us? And so we got this idea that the trip that our son took us on as our first backpacking trip, after our respite, we decided, hey, that would be a good trip to invite some other people. So this is us at the same Dogtooth Peak with Courtright Reservoir, a little hazy this time, with our nieces and nephews who joined us on this trip. And it was quite an adventure, and I think all of them just loved it and wanted to come back again.
Okay, gosh, I keep losing my mouse. Here we go. All right. So I have two pictures to share on this trip, and you'll see why as I go along. So we are, again, on a segment of the John Muir Trail, and we are on right now the north slope of Pinchot Pass. It's quite a high pass. We start early in the morning, and as you can see with this picture, there's Louis. The approach to this pass is quite barren, and yet it's geologically beautiful and interesting with bands of black and red rocks. And I very much enjoyed that scene. And yet then when we did actually achieve the hiking to the pass and gaze down on the other side, the view was dramatically different. And this other side of the pass is, you can see there's green plants and blue lakes and just full of a potential for life. And so I'm sharing these two photos because I feel like God's diversity can change quickly and unexpectedly. So on a deeper note, it also, think about it symbolically, is that when our journey seems desolate, or we feel that we have in an area of our life where we have a steep mountain to climb, God is encouraging us, like, I'm with you, keep going, and He can open up a new direction, a new opportunity to us.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next picture. This is also on the John Muir Trail, and it's looking south on Vedette Meadow. And this is in Kings Canyon on the way up to Charlotte Lake. And there's this mountain sticking out of nowhere. And there was something magical to me about this picture with the mountain and then the greenery and the giant boulders. And I decided to make this my Facebook cover photo. And then one of my college friends shared that he really likes that photo. And I said, yeah, I like it too. But I'm a little bit troubled by that one dead tree right there on the right-hand side, it seems to be out of place. And he said to me, I really like that tree because it reminds me of our beloved who have gone before us, but yet are still present with us. And it made me think of our daughter who had passed away in 2011 and how she was traveling with us on all these journeys and somehow through us experiencing them as well. So mystery solved. That tree is our cloud of witnesses. Next.
Mm-hmm. All right. So in another time, we took my sister and her husband back to the Dinky Lakes area, again on our desire to share an area that is close by to us and that we love with our family and friends. And I can tell you since it was late September, I was preparing my sister and her husband that, that since it's not summer anymore, it's going to be very dry and the summer flowers will be past. And perhaps the creeks will be dry and things like that. So I was just trying to set their expectations. And then we come upon this area that we have hiked upon many times, beautiful lakes, and it is now radiant with the fire of transfiguration and beautiful fall colors, which in the summertime you would just walk by and that just looked like a green ground cover. And it really showed me and taught me not to discount what God can do.
So last year, we got even more ambitious with our guided trips, and we invited folks that had been on our shorter trip to do a 60-mile loop in Kings Canyon, as well as kind of on the border of Kings Canyon and John Muir Wilderness outside of Courtright Reservoir. And this is at the end of the trip. Everybody survived. And afterwards, just talking to my son's girlfriend and some of the other folks, we had some really grueling days from dawn till past dusk of 20 miles with off-trail bushwhacking and some trying moments of patience and mosquitoes eating us alive. But everybody made it. And my son's girlfriend then afterwards shared that, wow, it made me realize that if I can do something like this, I probably can do whatever I set my mind to. And that really touched my heart and made me want to explore more, basically. Yeah. So we discovered untapped faith and inner strength in others.
Okay, we're done our last couple sets of pictures here. So Louis and I were blessed this year to be able to travel to New Zealand on a hiking tour. And perhaps some of you have been to New Zealand. It is a truly remarkable part of our world. And the western coast of New Zealand, which is where this picture was taken, is a temperate rainforest. And the plants and diversity are truly incredible. And there are every shade of green on every surface. And to be very honest, this picture comes the closest to describe that amazing palette of green, but it really it really is not doing it the justice of when you see it with your own eyes. But the diversity of God's creation was just ever present on this trip. And then we were also, Louis and I, very fortunate. We were able to take a 3-day backpacking trip as a portion of our time in New Zealand. And this is a photograph that I took as we were starting our hike early one morning. We had an early start. The sun was just coming up and we were up into the clouds, and there was a lot of mist and swirling of the fog and clouds going on. And as I tend to do when after we return from a trip, I share the pictures with my family. And one of my nephews, who had actually been on a backpacking trip with us, said he looked at this picture and he's like, "Wow, this picture looks like the opening of heaven and the gateway to heaven. Like you're going up this trail and you're going to enter into this bright light of heaven and up on the distance." And I was really stunned. And I thought to myself, you just never know how your sharing will touch other people. And so with that, we'd really like to thank you for allowing us to take the time to talk to you about our ways that we've encountered God in our wilderness adventures. Perhaps you've also experienced the wonder of God in nature or been inspired by our sharing today, like my nephew. And I will stop sharing, and perhaps if there's time, Pastor John, you can let us know if there's time for sharing or questions.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for, the sharing. If anyone who would like to share any comment or your response, and please do so. Terry, go ahead.
You're muted. I muted everybody, so if you want to speak, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I wondered if you encountered any animals is one question. And then what about sunrises and sunsets?
We do encounter animals, birds, and a lot of chipmunks.
And bears.
We have seen some bears and quite a few deer.
Marmots.
Marmots are pretty up on the
What
passes.
are those little rabbity things? Yeah, I forget they have a name.
Pikas.
Thank you. Pikas,
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of animals, but last year we did a 100-mile trip through the southern part of Yosemite, and every 100 yards along the trail, we didn't see any bears, but we definitely knew they were there by all the markings that they left for us along the trail. So we were glad we didn't see any bears.
Yeah.
So, Terry, since you asked, I am going to share a picture that I was thinking of sharing, and then we took out of the list because you asked about sunrises and sunsets. So I will share a picture with you, and then you will get a sense of what that is. Let me know if you can see it.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah, this is a sunset.
And this lake is actually quite large, but because of the rocks, you can't see it. It's called Little
Red Devil Lake.
Little Red Devil Lake, yeah.
They like devil references for some reason.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure. I'm like, I don't really see this as anything related to the devil, but prevalent.
Could I tell you about my first experience or my second experience backpacking? Do we have time for that?
I shouldn't say.
All right. Well, so I signed up for a Presbyterian church camp when I was in high school. And so it's a little different. Usually when you go to church camp, you go to a fixed place. But instead, we went up to Tuolumne Meadows. It was a group from the Bay Area, and we had 3 adults leading. The leader was very much like Dave Samuelson, looked like him. He was a pastor at a church in the East Bay somewhere. And then the other 2 adults, one was a woman, and she came along on the trip, because you always need women if there are girls there. And then the other he was not a pastor. He was just a very dedicated youth leader. Anyway, we started hiking out of Tuolumne Meadows, and we had horses to carry our food. We carried our backpacks. We went to a place called Mathis Lake, and we went cross country, and we got lost. And so dark came on. This is the first night out. So we decided, well, let's eat up all our candy bars so at least we'll have something to eat. So we did. We pooled all our candy bars and extra food, and we went to bed, pitched our tents, got in our sleeping bags, went to bed. And we were sort of joking with the pastor, why don't you turn these candy bars into, hamburgers or something? So we'll have something to eat. But of course, that didn't happen. About 10 a.m., the pack train shows up. They were very worried that they had stranded a group of kids without food because they couldn't find us. So it all ended happily. And it was a very interesting week. We were at about 10,000 feet of elevation. And we had been given a book to read before we came on the trip. So we were supposed to do homework. And I can't remember the name of the book, but it was about, kids in high school and the problems they run into. Very, very important week of my young life. Something I'll never forget. And very grateful for the opportunity to have that in a Christian group.
Yeah, that sounds like quite an adventure. So I didn't mention, but I always carry one of these devices on our trips. It's a satellite communicator that allows me to send an SOS signal to emergency services. I've only had to use this once because somebody got hurt out in the wilderness. And within an hour, we had a helicopter overhead and they were able to rescue her and pull her out. So, yeah. And it also, you can do GPS many different ways, but this allows you to do GPS, of course.
Luis, I have a question. Regarding that GPS machine things. The picture's really stunning and beautiful, but at the same time, I feel that when you and Karen climbing or going on a trip many days, must be very lonely or kind of, I don't know, is that kind of not always fun because it looks like a mountain doesn't speak and mountain doesn't any dynamics. It's very quiet and stillness. So how did you handle the kind of your emotional conditions or situations, and also physically, how did you handle all the eating and sleeping up there? It seems to be very cold and a little bit rough, mosquitoes and things. Just wondering about how you handle.
You don't go in June anymore.
Well, each of these trips, there's a lot of planning, right? And, you start small and you build up experience, and then you figure out what works, what doesn't work, and adjust your gear constantly. But we know how much we need to eat. We've carried up to 12 days of food with us, which is a lot. It starts getting heavy, maybe a pound a day, plus or minus, depending on your particular needs. And definitely you come back a little bit leaner than you left. But the solitude part, everybody's different. But for me, it's very much a spiritual, meditative experience. And sometimes I kind of long for just not seeing anybody for 5 or 6 days, except for Karen, of course, And then it's definitely a lesson in marital cooperation, right? Because we may not seem like it, but we're both pretty well opinionated and think we know how to do everything, right? So there's definitely some skill set refinement as you go along. Did I answer your question?
Can I just add to that? I also feel it might not be, backpacking isn't for everyone, right? But I think, like Louis, for me, maybe not the first day, maybe not the second day, but somewhere along the third day, I start to realize my only thought is putting one foot in front of the other and just looking around and like seeing the scenery and thinking about God, and everything becomes very still. And it's a very spiritual experience. It's like a retreat. It's like a spiritual retreat for me.
Yeah. And the simplicity of life is also something when we come back, we are in shock because of all the creature comforts and rapidness of everything. It's so simple. You get up. Do I want to get up now? Yeah, I want to get up now. And I got to pack. And I've done it this 100 times, prepare breakfast, done that 100 times. It's just very, it's like a meditation you're going throughout the day.
Yes. And we've just between Louis and I, because we've taken so many trips together now, there's even less talking, Pastor John, because we each know what our role is. Like we come into camp and I know what I'm going to do. He knows what he's going to do. And, we've got it well divided, just like you would have like your chores at home. It's like there's the things that each of you like to do or are better at. And you split up the tasks.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges, and I'm sure other backpackers can attest to this, is the food. And that's always a challenge. Like, how do you get stuff up there that's tasty and nutritious, right? And most of it tends to be very sweet, and it starts getting after a week, it's almost repulsive. Do I have to eat that? Yeah. So Karen's a wonderful cook, and she's figured out lots of ways to make meals that can be resuscitated, rehydrated up there.
Or savory.
That are tasty and not sweet.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Jane?
I used to do quite a bit of backpacking years ago before my back got weaker, and I just loved the solitude. And living in the Silicon Valley area, you really appreciate it when you can get away and not have the bustle around you. But I have to tell you, years ago, back in the early 60s when I did latter 60s when I did my first backpacking trip, four of us were very inexperienced, and we actually took in like a box of cereal, not condensing anything. And somebody said to me, well, why didn't you just bring your hairdryer along? Because gosh, you brought way too much and big boxes and cocoa containers and things like that.
Yeah.
We soon learned. And I just have to say that my spiritualness comes from the mountains. And I've told Pastor Dave this. I said, I love you dearly, but my spiritualness comes when I'm out in nature.
Yeah.
So now I just get a lot from Rancho San Antonio and doing Wildcat Loop and things like that. But it was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I love the photos.
Yeah. One other thing about the food is back in the olden days, we didn't used to have to store our food as well as we do now. Now, many of the wilderness areas require approved bear canisters where you have to secure your food. The bears have figured out how to get into everything. And so no more hanging food from trees. They've figured that out. So you have to carry these large containers. They look like big water bottles that the bears can't penetrate and keep your food locked up.
I have to say, weather makes a big difference. I went on a backpacking trip called the West Coast Trail of Vancouver Island in 1975, I think. Well, we were on the trail for a week. We went about 50 miles in 7 days. And it's flat, but there's a lot of erosion. So you go down a hill, you hold onto the roots, and you go down the hill hanging onto roots. Wow. And so forth. But anyway, my point was the weather. It rained 5 of the 7 days. So the first 2 days were fairly decent weather-wise. We were getting used to the trail, which is good. We got used to the trail in the sunshine. But 5 days of rain, hiking in the rain, and we were staying on beaches, so we would find fallen timber and construct shelters that way. And you finally warm up during the day. We'd build a big fire because there's plenty of lumber, and we'd finally warm up at night before we got in our sleeping bags. But that was the most difficult backpacking trip I've ever taken.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds arduous. One other thing I was going to share is that, you know, we thought we were too old, right? And I guess my newfound discovery is, you're never too old. You figure out what you can do and you do it the best you can. And if you can't do it, you stick with it until you can do something else.
Yeah, yeah.
And just keep going. And if there's a will, there's a way. But so I encourage you to all to get out there into the wilderness, even Rancho San Antonio. That's a beautiful place. Baylands, shoreline, whatever you can do, and get out there. And the other day, we got visited right on our driveway by a great heron. So I didn't even have to go in the wilderness. You just flew in there hunting for lizards.
Louis, I just wanted to mention about the generation gap. So back in the 60s and 70s, when my husband and I did a lot of backpacking on the East Coast along the Appalachian Trail, we had a seaplane fly us into a wilderness lake and drop us off, and he had a canoe attached to his plane, and he said, "See you in a week." And if we needed help, we had a mirror that we would shine in the sky because periodically airplanes flew over. No GPS, no high tech stuff. We had a mirror, and I just wanted to share, how different things were then.
Yeah.
And we threw our food over the tree and hung it down and did all those things that today, of course, you wouldn't do. But huge gaps.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Fun.
Yeah.
We caught more rainbow trout than we could eat, and so we came home with a lot of the backpacking food.
Nice.
So anyway, it was great times. Good memories.
Yeah. Well, great.
I have one more quick question. Oh yeah, Katie, you go first.
Oh, just great job, you guys. Really beautiful photos. Do you shoot with an iPhone or do you take a different camera?
So Katie, I've tried both, and I find that I've had different phones over the year. Right now I have a Pixel 9 Pro phone. So that's what I use. And I tend to use that more often. It somehow the pictures come out a little brighter on there.
Yeah, great job. Really nice, beautiful pictures. And I love getting out in nature, and same thing. It's just so restorative to me. And I love hiking, and we're really blessed that we have so much really wonderful access to nature and almost wilderness here.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Well, I love camping too. My honeymoon with my wife was the walk-in campsite in Yosemite, and then that was the first and the last one so far. My wife later realized my wife doesn't like tent camping much. So, but my more question is that I'd like to hear a little bit about your spiritual encounter through this whole trip. I mean that solitude does mean that stillness or mutedness. I'm sure that either you spoke to God or God speak to you during the trip. You mentioned something like God's diversity changes as you experience all the mountains and things, and God can open up a new direction as you experience those things, and a new lens and your own perspective. So just wondering, when you do have this all hikings and up in the mountains, and how did it work? God spoke to you most of the time, or you spoke to God? And how was what was your spiritual encounter during the whole trip?
I can just share that I can't say that I find myself as I'm hiking along feeling closer to God than I am when I am just going about my regular day, right, in my Sunnyvale life. And I think a big part of that is because I don't have as many distractions. And I do find that, I will see something and I will immediately say, in my mind to God, like, oh, that is, like, wow, right? It's like small, even the tiniest little thing, like the miniature flower or whatever it is, right? And as I'm going along, I feel like I'm in constant contact with God, and somehow God feels closer to me. And I don't know if this ever happens to you, but often I can be just walking along and I'm not really engaged in anything truly deep in my thoughts, but all of a sudden, like a new idea or new insight will enter into my mind. And I feel like that's maybe God's way or his spirit of, sharing something with me.
I think I have a similar experience, whereas you enter the wilderness, and then little by little, you start to disconnect from all the distractions and the burdens, and focus on like what's really important in your mind, right? So a lot of clutter kind of falls away after a few days. It's, you still have your burdens, right? They don't go away, but a lot of the clutter and distractions, little by little, fall away, and it's you can focus on being more in the moment, right? Whether it's climbing or river crossing or whatever you're trying to do, focus on being in the moment and connected more strongly with the spiritual domain, because of all those distractions and clutter being, all that noise being stripped away, or
Yeah. Do you remember, Pastor Zhang, I shared with you about my hiking poles?
Yeah.
I can share that if you want. I don't know if there's time. You're past noon.
Okay.
I don't need to share it if you have to end.
Seconds,
yeah, but I can if you'd like. It's Louis and I are in a small group of some folks at LAMC, and we talk about spiritual things. And one of the questions that was put to the group is like, how do you picture God, right? And I think maybe I misinterpreted the question, but we had just been back from a trip, and Louis had purchased hiking poles for me. And at first I was a little resistant to using them. But then as the trip went on, I was like, oh, these poles are helping me in so many ways. And so my answer to this question was, well, Jesus is my hiking poles because when I need to cross a stream and I'm nervous and the water is rough and dangerous, my hiking poles are with me, and they give me stability and encouragement to keep going. And when I'm going up a steep hill, again, I can rely on my hiking poles for extra strength. And then the downhill, which actually I find more difficult because it can be slippery sometimes, is like, when sometimes life gets slippery, my Jesus hiking poles are there to help me stabilize. And so whenever I'm hiking now and I have a little like almost slip, right, and my hiking poles help me stabilize, I always say out loud, thank you, Jesus.
Carol, I remember that, and maybe in a sense that your stunning view, maybe not the real essence of God, in a humble, hiking pole might be your sort of savior and God that walking
symbolically, right?
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share, and have a blessed day.